Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudes. Welcome to the DCTV series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is about getting through in the global currency reset. Last week, we discussed how the company that is trying to keep us enslaved with paper money is really bankrupt, and we are the ones who own all the gold and other wealth in the global debt facility. The company which prints our paper currency is simply a big liar. 3 mathematicians from the Federal Institute of Technology called this company the Network of Global Corporate Control. The global debt facility containing the world's wealth was set up at the end of World War II and is administered by the 188 ministers of finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. Those ministers of finance and development appointed me as the overseer mandate trustee of the global debt facility. I've been fighting the network of global corporate control even when I didn't know it existed, because I was just doing this for my job in the World Bank's legal department. The network of global corporate control is pretending that Christine Lagarde was reappointed as the IMF's managing director, when what really happened is that the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF fired Christine Lagarde for trying to steal the world's wealth from the world's people by signing an agreement with the Vatican. I simply invalidated that agreement and then contacted all the embassies to tell them that the network of global corporate control was getting carved up in a global currency reset. So what we have is a small number of people who know that they're really entitled to the world's wealth, surrounded by a very large majority of people who believe the network of global corporate control's lies. This segment is about how to function during this mix-up. It's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be fun because the chances we win are over 90%. We know this from a very accurate power transition model that came to the World Bank in 2004 from the Department of Defense. The power transition model predicted that the United States would lose the gentleman's agreement to appoint the president of the World Bank, which happened in 2010. When I and Elaine Colville reported about the corruption at the World Bank to the United Kingdom Parliament 3 times, the last time was in 2013, and I testified to the European Parliament in 2011, the power transition model started predicting we were going to end the corruption. The model is on track. You can read how we are progressing in ending the scam of paper currencies by seeing the increased numbers who know the truth about the world's wealth in the global debt facility. And we're going to talk about the rules that we're going to live by during the global currency reset. The first one is to know that we're all in this together and that we're in touch with each other. The countries of the world are looking at the United States to see whether we're going to lead humanity out of this mess that the network of global corporate control has inflicted on our world. I'm open to everyone, and I'm listening to everyone, and I'm terribly sorry about the people whom the network of global corporate control has been harming. And I'd like to show my email address. That's karenhudes@hotmail.com. Thank you. The people of the world also know that we're not going to give up our wealth that belongs to us. We're going to replace that scam called fractional reserve fiat currencies with treasury currencies from our nations and with local currencies. And when we have finished dealing with the logistics and calculated the true price of gold, we're going to exchange the national paper currencies with national Aurum currencies. And you can see what an example of the Aurum is. There's no reason to believe anything else. You'll be getting daily updates to see what's going on. And don't think that the media is telling you the truth. It's lying. The second rule is to stay in touch with a small group of people that you want to work with. You're being bombarded with advanced military technology that's interfering with your thoughts. About 10% of you have learned how to function despite this interference. If you're one of those, then reach out to the others and help them. Eventually, we'll all be able to function despite this interference, and we will find where this technology is being operated, and we will destroy it. In the teleprompter, you'll see a link to some testimony from an expert. You can see the patents to this technology. And the third rule is to learn from your mistakes. And yes, there it is, the guillotine. We do not want another French Revolution. France in 1789, Britain in 1640, Russia in 1917, Germany and Hungary in 1918 and 19, and Spain of 1936 share common traits. Provocateurs aiming to destroy the fabric of society. The outward sign is debt, loss of control, and secret organizations directed from outside in the doomed nation. There are provocateurs ready to destroy your country. Do not give them a chance. If you feel you must demonstrate, build a strong network of proctors and make sure that you can trust those proctors to maintain control. I doubt that you will pass that hurdle. The other demonstrations are designed to panic and make people feel that things are out of control when they really are not. We are going to be letting you know about progress on the global currency reset. Anything else you hear is from the network of global corporate control and their stooges. Now I'm going to give you a story about what happened to the United States after the French Revolution. Daniel Pézeur, he was the Crown Prince Louis, also known as Louis XVII of France, was smuggled out of France to North Carolina in the United States after his mother was executed. The Pézeurs have gone to extreme lengths to corrupt government documents, such as courthouse records. They have hidden the births of many of their descendants and have covered over with extreme secrecy most of their monetary holdings. They've been so powerful that they could hide their wealth and power and use other families as proxies. If you search hard enough, you can figure it out. I just wanted to give you a hint on what to look for. There's research on the 48 families of the Virginia Company. That's one of the secret corporations that is comprised of the secret oligarchy. In October 1781, when the Earl of Cornwallis capitulated to the British East India Company employee, George Washington, the name of the Virginia Company was renamed. The new secret corporation was now called United States of America Corporation and Body Politic. The terms of the capitulation was that the secret corporation would continue in existence forever. The arrangement that the King or Queen of England would continue to receive 20% of the revenues from the Virginia Company as per the old charter of 1607. Again, forever. The Pézeur family signed a contract with Benjamin Franklin in 1785 to handle all of the communication and transportation in the secret corporation. Again, this was forever. The Crown Prince of France, Louis Charles Bourbon-Capet, was made manager of the United States Corporation in 1805. At that time, the Crown Prince was 20 years old. He had been in hiding in the city of London since both of his parents were beheaded during the French Revolution in 1793. His father, Louis-Charles Bourbon-Capet, that's Louis XVI, and his mother were of the pure Louis Charlemagne bloodline, Marie Antoinette von Habsburg bloodline. That's the same bloodline as the Queen Elizabeth II today. The Pézeur family lost control of the Virginia Company in 1933 when the company had to file for bankruptcy. All of the executive orders issued by Roosevelt disenfranchised Louis Pézeur family from the corporation in 1933. At that time, it was taken over by Colonel Leroy Springs, who was the founder of the Spring-Made bed linen factory. Most of you know by now, the Harp brothers and their lizard constituents used the electronic geometries from HAARP to mind control us. And one of the best ways is our spring-made resonance mattresses. This reminds me of the circles found around major areas like Pine Ridge or any city or country to pacify the people with frequencies. Anyway, the founder of the Spring-Made bed linen factory in Lancaster, South Carolina, Leroy Springs, Colonel Springs' granddaughter, is the main person in charge of the corporation and was head of the Federal Reserve Bank. Her name is Crandall Close Bowles. Does that ring another bell? Prince Charles's wife? I don't know if Crandall is still alive today, but she was on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Charlotte, North Carolina, and was chief executive officer of the Spring-Made Bed Linen Company. The Federal Reserve Bank evolved out of the North Carolina Gold Company, chartered in 1899 in Charlotte, North Carolina. The First National Bank of Charlotte was the bank that made the secret gold bullion payments to the Queen of England for 190 years. At any rate, the Federal Reserve Bank of Charlotte, North Carolina, makes the secret electronic funds transfers to the City of London today. This is the 20% of the tax revenues that will forever go back to the Crown of England via the original contracts with the Virginia Company. In 1607, King James already knew that there were going to be 48 contiguous states in North America. Remember also, the gateway to the sun in Peru had 48 glyphs around the major figure, Quetzalcoatl, the snake ruler. Anyway, King James knew this because it was he who chartered the Virginia Company, and he knew in 1607 that there were going to be 48 states, because there were 48 Merovingian families who signed on to the Virginia Company charter. So where are these signatures today? They're held secretly. Each Merovingian family was to have its very own state as its kingdom. There were some secret trusts executed with the Pope of Rome also, such as the states of Maryland. And I do believe that is why they, to this day, also keep the UCBO trust so secretive for the few oligarchical monarch control and rule of assets, which is why these trusts are not found in the ordinary law schools, except Cornell. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what happened with Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Remember, he was managing director of the IMF before Christine Lagarde. You should know that Dominique Strauss-Kahn had been trying to do something about the United States' responsibility for the world's gold in the global debt facility when he was managing director. That's when he started to have all these problems with the network of global corporate control. I had been trying to get the help of Dominique Strauss-Kahn when I was fighting corruption in the Bretton Woods institutions. And I'd like to read you an email that I wrote in November 2011. And I'm reading. On October 24, 2008, I gave Dominique Strauss-Kahn damaging information about Robert Zoellick's role in the cover-up at the World Bank. Zoellick tried to discredit me in the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations by giving people a confidential press release I drafted and having those people call the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations about the release so the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations would think I was the one distributing the release. I asked the Senate parliamentarian to look into this abuse. That same month, information on Dominique Strauss-Kahn's affair with a Hungarian staff member at the IMF named Piroska Nagy was leaked to the Wall Street Journal. During my Yale Law School reunion on the 4th of November, that's in 2011, I sat next to Robert Litt, who was the second general counsel of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Litt investigated Dominique Strauss-Kahn's affair with Piroska Nagy in October 2008 when he was a partner at Arnold & Porter. It was never clear how Dominique Strauss-Kahn's investigation made it to the Wall Street Journal. Piroska was separated from her husband, who was former Argentine Central Bank President Mario Blair. Blair said, quote, "One thing that appears in newspapers is that I somehow or another discovered this issue. I took it to the IMF, etc. That's all fake." That's the end of the quote. Strauss-Kahn and the French executive director Ambroise Fayol misused the information that I gave France in February 2009 when Dominique Strauss-Kahn's French lawyer, Anne-Marie Leroy, was hired as the World Bank General Counsel. Leroy was not vetted by the executive search firm for the General Counsel position, although this is necessary. Jim Wolfenson refused the board's request for me to become the bank's General Counsel in 2003 because I was not on the long list of the executive search firm. Then, when I was put on the executive search firm's long list for General Counsel in 2006, the bank's Human Resources Department covered that up. In May 2011, when Dominique Strauss-Kahn's problems began with Nafissatou Diallo, I went to an open town hall meeting to give my congressman, Chris Van Hollen, my testimony for the European Parliament. Van Hollen asked me if there was any connection between my case and Dominique Strauss-Kahn's, and I told Van Hollen about what had happened in the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. I don't think we want to have anything to do with this can of worms by implicating the U.S. Congress in the Dominique Strauss-Kahn fiasco. That's only going to arouse the ire of Congress, and especially Van Hollen, who was one of the members on the Super Congress trying to balance the budget. If I'm asked about Dominique Strauss-Kahn, I will punt. France should be one of my supporters on the board, but instead I have to contend with Leroy. I asked Leroy to check with the chair of the board's audit committee, Al-Mofadi, about settling my lawsuit, but she refused. Now, you can see from this letter that I wrote in 2011, this is before I knew about the network of global corporate control and the fact that most of these countries are subject to state capture and don't handle the way the country's interests are really. They don't represent the people they're supposed to be representing. They don't carry out their offices. They are loyal only to the network of global corporate control. Now, I'd like to spend the last 10 minutes telling you about some of my experiences with my mortgage, with my bank, and with my credit card with the network of global corporate control. Hold it up. This is some of the correspondence I have on my mortgage. What happened with my mortgage is that it was assigned from the bank that I had originally signed it to another bank. And then what happened was the first bank, that was SunTrust, started deducting double mortgage payments from the first bank, that was Bank of America, and also NationStar. I finally found out who the ultimate bank is that NationStar has been collecting for. I didn't realize it. They collected double mortgage payments for over $2,000. And I put my foot down, and that was refunded. And then lo and behold, they did that again, and there was absolutely no authority. I had been using a bill payment called Quicken, And I tried to get to the bottom of this. I found out that State Street Bank was keeping double books. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And whenever I tried to get the problem resolved, somehow the software wasn't printing out. Why would the software not print out what my bank statement was? The reason is because, without telling anybody, Quicken had assigned the right to administer my bill paying to SunTrust Bank, which was, the reason is because the network of global corporate control is all one bank, without bothering to tell anybody. So I refused to pay, and I wanted the refund of the double payment. I never got the refund back. And NationStar just kept billing me and billing me. So I was very surprised. You can't read this, but this is a legal notice of somebody went ahead and did a class action because of the way NationStar is administering the mortgages. So that's on the mortgage. Now let me tell you about what happened with my credit card. I leased a car at one point, and lo and behold, that car lease company sent my credit card information to a company called Trilegent, which started deducting money from my credit card all the time, not authorized. And at a certain point, when I found this out, I sued them. And this is a check, a refund from Trilegent. I didn't win my lawsuit, but what I did was I wrote to all of the attorneys general, and I talked to them about the corruption at the World Bank, and I talked to them about these credit card payments that were continuing to be deducted, and I talked about how this lawsuit was not getting settled or handled appropriately. It turns out that all of the attorneys general in the National Associations of Attorneys General, they are in bed with a network of global corporate control. They're not doing their job as the attorneys general. This is not the way it's supposed to be, obviously. So that's just the experience that I have as an attorney. Some of the attorneys have tried to settle some of these suits, but it's lackadaisical. They don't really represent the constituents. That's because they're used to the thought that the network of global corporate control is allowed to run the country, and that's what many of the other countries think. But the power of this power transition model in pointing out that coalitions can form is that if we all work together, we are much stronger than the network of global corporate control. And that's why I have to tell you, the reason that I got, this is a very recent check. It's dated February 18th. I had to laugh when I got it. I wonder what the network of global corporate control is thinking when they see that we're onto them. Because the only way that this scheme can work is if it's secret, if it's hidden. If people believe that the news that they're getting is correct, that it's not just simply propaganda from the network of global corporate control. But the fact of the matter is that we're onto them. And so the question now is for those of us that understand what the situation is, and we have put our feet down. And when I say we, people often want to know who it is I'm working with. And the groups, we're all working together. One of the difficulties, though, is in figuring out whether these groups are legitimate or whether they're actually secretly directed by the network of global corporate control. The ones that are directed by the network of global corporate control, sometimes you call them AstroTurf organizations. One of these groups is called Convention of States. They're trying to make sure that people don't ask for a constitutional Convention in order to get our Constitution back in effect, because it's not in effect. We're under martial law. I made that statement at a DCTV function, and I would say the entire room shut down. It was just so preposterous. They couldn't wrap their minds about that absolute truth, about that absolute fact, because it represents such a fundamental betrayal. How could it be that all of the lawyers are lying to them about whether the United States is under martial law? But you know, when you have a coalition that is in charge of the world's gold, which is what our coalition is, you can get to the bottom of this kind of corruption. That's what the power transition model has predicted. That has 90 to 95% accuracy, and that we've been tracking. It's the best way to describe the situation is that it really depends on you, because you have to reach out to that group that is listening to the mainstream media, and you have to get their attention, and you have to convince them that things are really much different than they understand. They really are living inside a matrix, and it's going to be a wonderful awakening to have a world where we all care for one another, where our health is going to be it's going to be much, much better. You understand what's been happening to the doctors who have been trying to really help people with their health, or the vaccines. It's preposterous that we would be harmed rather than helped by our medical profession. Now, I'm being told that it's time to wrap up. I'd like to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Please stay in touch, and you've got my email address. I answer my email. We've discussed in today's segment how we're going to keep on track in cleaning up the corruption in our world brought about by the now bankrupt Network of Global Corporate Control. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudes.